You're good to go.
Thank you. All right, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Monroe, and I'm a Strategic Business Advisor for the Town of Oakville. I'm joined here today by the Parking Management Strategy Project team, consisting of other members of the Town of Oakville and RJ Burnside and Associates. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that Oakville is rich in the history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the lands of the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron and the Haudenosaunee, I apologize, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we are in solidarity with Indigenous brothers and sisters to honor and respect the four directions, lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that walked before us, and all of the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for being stewards of this traditional territory. We would like to welcome you to the second public meeting this week for the townwide parking management strategy. The first public meeting was held yesterday and focused on the commercial districts, which include downtown Oakville, Kerr Village, and Bronte Village. The presentation materials for that public meeting will be made available online. This public meeting focuses on the North Oakville residential areas, which are north of Dundas Street. The purpose of this public meeting is to introduce the study, provide an update on the strategy so far, and to get feedback from you on the parking-related issues and challenges you currently face in North Oakville. Through this study, the town will be considering solutions to meet parking demand while supporting and promoting good urban design, enhanced economic development, and encouraging alternative forms of transportation. Before I hand this presentation over to Ray Backey from RJ Burnside and Associates, I would like to note that the presentation slides and a question and answer sheet will be made available on the town website in the coming days. You can submit questions throughout today's presentation by typing into the Q&A box on screen or by email to enforcement@oakville.ca. At the end of the presentation, there will be a question and answer session, and we'll go through as many questions as we can. If we're unable to answer your question at this public meeting, please look for them to be included in the question and answer sheet that will be posted. A survey will also be made available on the town website to gather additional feedback on parking related concerns in North Oakville. And now I'd like to turn it over to Ray. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. We have about 25 slides that I'll walk through today. We will introduce the discussion with the study scope and purpose and a review of the objectives of the town, both operational and strategic, as it relates to parking and the broader town aspirations. We'll identify the study approach and how this consultation feeds into our project process. We've collected data related to parking utilization within North Oakville, which we'll summarize, and we'll discuss the public surveys for which we receive input on some of your thoughts to date. The presentation will outline some of the data collection surveys that have indicated that are related to the parking needs and opportunities for residential parking space size, on-street parking, community park parking, and school parking for North Oakville. And finally, we'll present some potential alternative solutions and how you can provide your input and additional suggestions to this process. To allow all of you who are attending tonight to provide live input, we have included a few questions to poll participants and to give you a sense of the opinions of your fellow residents. To participate, you can either hold a smartphone over with a camera on over the QR code on the screen and click the pop-up, or visit slido.com and enter the code shown. In this case, it's 369528. But if you do have a smartphone handy, the easiest way is just to hover over the QR code with your camera on. So after following these instructions, you'll be directed to a page, and that will say no active polls at this time, and that's fine. The polls will appear throughout the presentation. So please respond with the most appropriate answer and hit send. And I do note that depending on the length of the question and the size of your phone, you may have to scroll down to hit send. Alternatively, if you don't have a smartphone handy, feel free to enter responses into to the questions into the chat box. This project is being led by the Town of Oakville Municipal Enforcement Services in cooperation with the Planning Services Department. Kenya Allison and Kate Coburn are the town's two project managers providing oversight on this project, along with Jill McInnes and Margaret Boswell, in addition to Rebecca, of course. My name is Ray Backey. I'm Senior Vice President and Project Manager for this project for RJ Burnside and Associates. Gordon Huey is our Senior Transportation Planner. Gordon and I are leading our consultant team, providing support to the town. The town conducted parking assessment in North Oakville, the lands north of Dundas, that led to parking strategies that have been incorporated into the developments that have occurred over the past 10 years. The study is intended to assess parking conditions associated with the policies for North Oakville and to develop a strategy for the next number of years that address operational and planning and strategic needs. The town objectives were documented in recent town strategy reports. The strategic objectives, North Oakville secondary plan, which uses the parking supply as a travel demand management method to discourage vehicle travel. The community energy strategy, committing to greenhouse gas reduction targets. And the urban mobility and transportation study, strategy, which focused on shifting parking demand to other modes. There is a need to align this parking strategy with other town initiatives. The town and other municipalities are challenged with providing and managing parking supply in a manner that serves the public and specifically the needs of adjacent land uses. There are a range of operational objectives of parking, both publicly owned and privately owned. And it is desirable that parking is provided in close proximity to the destination land use so that it's convenient, accessible for those with mobility limitations, and is secure, particularly at night. Parking is provided with sufficient, it's desirable that parking is provided with sufficient capacity such that demand can be met and illegal parking does not affect traffic or pedestrian operations. It's desirable for parking to be available such that parking supply is in a location that's close to the parking need. Otherwise, people tend to sort of circle around looking for parking spaces, which is neither efficient nor sustainable. And it's desirable that the parking duration is appropriate, where there are the time limits match the needs of the adjacent land uses, so that you are staying, that your parking availability and the duration of the parking stay matches the activity of that land use. And it's desirable that parking space sizes are appropriate and usable and accessible. These are the operational issues that the town must contend with, but there are also strategic objectives that the town strives toward. Town Council has passed policies that support sustainability and discourage the provision of additional parking capacity and spaces allocated to parking. The town has passed a climate change sustainability policy that discourages automobile use and explicitly references limiting additional parking supply. The town strives to limit the amount of hard surface construction such as parking facilities in efforts to control stormwater runoff. And the amount of land dedicated to parking is a capital and operating cost to the town. Now we're on our first question. So if you've logged onto Slido on your phone or your computer, you can vote on this question. And the question itself is what issues are most important to you related to parking in North Oakville? not enough parking spaces on your property, not enough on-street parking spaces, too many on-street parking spaces blocking the frontage or impacting through traffic, small garage or driveway parking spaces, cars can't fit in my parking garage, for example, or on the driveway. Again, if just a reminder, if you can't see the send button, you may have to scroll down on your phone. So we're seeing sort of a balance of issues for people. Limited parking on property, too many on-street parking spaces. There's too much on-street parking. And again, this is a snapshot. We recognize that this is not a statistically significant survey, and there is an online survey on the town website for this project. But we did want to just share some of the thoughts and for you to share with other residents in the area. We'll give it another minute or so just to sort of see how things balance out, and then we'll move on. Okay. Great. Okay, we'll move to the next slide. This study has involved a review of previous data and a fairly extensive program, including public surveys and parking space occupancy counts and turnover counts, basically how many vehicles will use a space in a day, and site observations. This public meeting is intended to both inform you of the interim results and collect additional input. Following this meeting, we will confirm and assess alternative strategies and document a draft parking management study for consideration by the town. This study began with a review of the North Oakville vision and parking strategy. We recognize that North Oakville was developed with specific policies that encourage transit and active transportation. The vision for the community is to be a forward-looking community and a model for smart growth. It's to be compact and pedestrian-oriented. The community is to be well served by an interconnected transit system which is being developed as the street system develops. The study assesses residential parking needs, basically taking the pulse of the parking operations through utilization surveys, public attitudinal surveys, and this consultation. So of course, we're looking to hear from you. And through this process, we'll provide additional recommendations that refines the parking regulations and operations in North Oakville. As noted, the approach that was developed in the 2009 North Oakville parking strategy focused on a walkable and transit-oriented community, in part through the more moderate parking requirements of development. Specific elements of the North Oakville parking strategy include providing residential overnight permit parking on street, which is available, first come, first serve at $5 per day and $50 per month. Shared parking between parks and schools. Focus on-street parking for visitors. Discouraging surface parking. Minimizing dimensions, having smaller dimensions for parking facilities, and reducing minimum requirements where appropriate and establish maximum parking supply rates. These are the policies that the study has as background and we will be reviewing. Parking. Just, I guess, on the next section of next few slides, we'll focus on the residential parking needs. There are a number of categories of stakeholders that require on-street parking. residents that work at home or don't take their car into work, residents and resident visitors, school staff and parents picking up their kids from school or dropping off, park visitors that are not local to the community. These groups of stakeholders have parking needs at different times of the day, and there are opportunities to share the on-street supply between these groups. The town operational issues will also have to be considered, including snow removal and construction and maintenance activities. Policies in North Oakville include smaller residential parking spaces and driveways and garages. North Oakville minimum garage sizes were established at 5.5 meters long and 3 meters wide. This is about 2.2 meters shorter than the livable Oakville. This is the lands in Oakville south of Dundas. And the North Oakville minimum driveway sizes were established at 5.2 meters long and 2.6 meters wide. This is about 0.5 meters shorter than the rest of Oakville south of Dundas. Some pickup vehicles and large minivans are pretty much at the limits of the available driveway spaces. It may be an issue for clearance to garages or sidewalks or roads. And there are trends in vehicle sizes that may be increasing, and new developments may need to sort of keep that in mind as they proceed through the approval process. The graphic on the right illustrates how in Ontario, the percentage of large vehicles, vans, pickups, multi-use, multi-purpose vehicles have been increasing over the last a dozen years or so. So we have another question here. Just wanted to get a sense of what types of vehicles you have regularly parked at your household. You can check all that apply if you have multiple vehicles at your home: sedan, compact SUV, hatchback, mid or full-size SUV, minivan, pickup truck, motorcycle. Unfortunately, I think motorcycle is just off the screen, but the number looks to be low. The vast majority have sedans, some mid or full-size SUVs, about just under 30% pickup trucks at this point, 25% of the respondents. So that does give some numbers. I think they're not that far off of what we saw in the StatsCan Ontario numbers. Okay. Next slide. Since did you I guess the next slide is did you check your vehicle, whether your vehicle could fit in the parking spaces prior to purchasing or renting your property? This is always difficult to know what the process is when people are buying new homes, and getting a sense of all of the complexities of the potential purchase. And we did want to get a sense of what you were aware of and what you did check. So it's pretty close here between those who were aware and those who were not aware. Okay, and I think we have one more little poll question here for this section. Since moving to North Oakville, how many larger vehicles have you acquired that don't fit in parking spaces on your property? So I know this is a bit difficult to follow, but are there vehicles that just physically don't fit either on your driveway or in your garage? And again, that may be as a result of sort of checking, investigating what the available parking spaces are. So there are definitely some. Okay, so the next section relates to community parking needs. We've selected representative residential streets and residential streets in proximity to parks and surveyed parking utilization in early December of 2021. This map in North Oakville, east of Niagara, illustrates the locations of these surveys. We've seen that on-street parking has generally been below or at or below about 50% of the utilization. However, this can still create some longer walks to destinations. In the vicinity of parks, higher parking demand has been observed, and particularly during sporting events, just from our drive-bys during the spring. And we have heard these same comments from our residents through the resident input. We've surveyed parking lot demand and utilization at two schools, Audenowie School at St. George Savage Avenue and 16 Mile Drive, and St. Gregory's School on 16 Mile Drive east of Preserve Drive. And we have seen that Audenowie is fully utilized. The on-site parking lot is fully utilized during the day and requires some staff to park on street on most typical days. The graph shows the percentage of demand during the day, and Audenowie is basically full throughout the day. We've conducted utilization counts for parking on residential streets in proximity to the Audenowie School in mid-December. This map indicates sections of the roadway where parking is prohibited, first of all, which are the red sections, and permits have been provided to some school staff for parking throughout the school day. But we have seen that some teachers in their responses to the surveys have expressed concern about parking availability and proximity. There have also been concerns raised by residents related to the on-street parking in the vicinity of the school and traffic circulation and related safety concerns. So the next couple of slides, few slides relate to public questionnaire results. We have surveyed residents in North Oakville, and of about 144 respondents, that we've collected the following data. On average, residents indicated that they have 2.1 vehicles per household. And in terms of spaces, 1.6 garage parking spaces per household and 1.7 driveway parking spaces per household. Other important feedback includes that 38% of respondents say that they have vehicles that don't fit in their garage. And we are investigating further to get a better understanding of why. We have 15% that say that visitors can never find parking within 200 meters of their home. And another 15% say that they never have enough parking at their house. For those respondents who have indicated that they can't find on-street parking within 200 meters, it's most prevalent where residents have only 1 or 2 spaces on their property, and presumably larger properties with multiple parking spaces can accommodate some of their guest parking. Common issues with on-street parking spaces that have been raised through the survey as additional comments, development, construction, and snow take away some of the available spaces. There were some common areas of concern regarding parking availability, which includes Preserve Drive, west of St. George's School, Hibiscus Gardens, which is south of Odnawi, North Park Boulevard, and at the school itself, Odnawi itself. Other common comments include lack of guest parking, use of parking pads, so people sort of expanding the parking on the front yard, and narrow streets as a result of on-street parking and snowbanks. So we have another question for you here related to guest parking. North Oakville has overnight paid parking permits available on streets. Permits are available for 1 day, multi-day, or 30 days. Were you aware of these permit parking programs? So far, people do seem to be aware. Some not. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And we have another question here. Were you aware of the available overnight parking permits? If you were aware, sorry, were you aware of the available overnight parking permits, and have you purchased one? So yes, and I plan to, I've already purchased more than one. Yes, I plan to have already purchased one or more permits. Yes, but do not need a permit at this time. No, I'm not aware of the permit program. Okay, and just a couple of other slides here. This really relates to the potential strategies, and I think this really summarizes where we are. But this is we're still at a preliminary stage in our sort of formulating potential options to evaluate. And from the investigations, we've identified a number of potential strategies for consideration in response to the operational needs of residential parking in North Oakville. They include a supply, continue to supplement the on-street parking through the development process. School boards develop school parking strategies related to smaller sites and portable capacity. The town and the school boards consider shared parking in the vicinity of community parks and schools where they're side by side. Promotion and communication to promote effective utilization of residential garage spaces. We're not certain, and we're still investigating, but some of the people who have indicated that the garages are not large enough, it's unclear as to whether that is in part due to all of the other things that all of us have in our garages. Builder and the town to better communicate parking space size to potential house buyers. And in terms of regulation, to review permit parking policies for accommodation of overnight visitors, to manage permit parking for school teachers, permits granted only where a need is demonstrated, and consider changes to zoning bylaw and parking regulations. In terms of demand management, provide and promote transit to new communities and to promote active transportation modes. So that is sort of where we are, what our findings have been, what some of our initial thoughts are for potential strategies to address the issues. So how can you get involved? You can start now. We'll be responding to any questions and comments that were made today at the conclusion of this presentation in just a minute or so. And any questions we don't get to today, we will respond to over the next few days. Over the next few weeks, you'll be able to provide input through a public survey that's posted on the website. The URL is there. I think it is actually available for both the residential and the commercial surveys. And you can also contact me or Hanya. Our information is provided here. So that is our presentation. And I will stop sharing and take on any questions that have been added to the chat.
We currently don't have any questions, so we'll just give it a few minutes and see if people absorb it.
Okay.
Rebecca, I do see one comment in the question that with respect to driveway size, it didn't get the information from the builder at the time, which was in 2015. Just to provide some background, so the planning department in the review of development applications that are being approved since that time, that is quite a bit of time that since has passed. Builders are required to provide us with plans and dimensions that they now need to make available in sales centers so that people that are moving into North Oakville do understand what the dimensions of the garage and the driveway spaces will be. So that is something that has evolved, and I do appreciate that comment because it is something that we had acknowledged, and as North Oakville continues to grow and develop, we do appreciate these insights so that we can continue to apply any improvements as we do our review.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of questions coming in. The biggest issues that we find on Post Road is that they are parking in front of fire hydrants, driveways, and non-parking areas, causing congestions. Have we considered painting these areas with lines to indicate these areas more clearly?
I'll just simply say that, Amy, it's a good suggestion. We will consider it. Hanya is probably the best one to comment on the operations.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this suggestion. We can look into that. One of the challenges with putting any ground markings or any markings on the curbs is that during the winter months when there is snow, those become invisible. So it's difficult to rely on just strictly ground markings, but we can consider that suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question is, are there any plans to increase parking enforcement? Sometimes I call and they come many hours later, most of the time too late.
Thank you. I'll take an attempt at that. So we do have mobile compliance officers that enforce parking regulations throughout the town and are available on a 24/7 basis. They do have to prioritize their calls because they can't be everywhere at all times. And so a lot depends on the nature of the calls. You know, safety concerns always take precedent. But again, we can look at our how the enforcement grows as the town grows, and we do appreciate those comments.
Another question, is there a limit of how many overnight parking permits a household can be granted?
Thank you. That is a good question. We have been discussing that. We have two types of overnight permits. We have courtesy temporary on-street permits, and that allows residents to get a permit for up to 15 days per vehicle per year. So if they're having their driveway paved or it's a very temporary nature situation, and that there's a maximum 15 per vehicle per year. With respect to the paid permits, at this time we are looking at how we can manage and how we can look at allocating those permits. At this time, I don't believe there is a maximum, but that may be something that we'll be considering in the future, just to make sure that everyone has access to them who needs them.
And then we have one more right now, which is, will consideration be given to changing or increasing parking permit fees to manage demand for on-street permits?
Again, Hania, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but yes, it's a consideration.
Yeah, that's definitely a consideration. Some municipalities allocate permit fees to be equivalent to transit monthly passes. And so again, we'll be looking at the, throughout the study, we're looking at our rates and fees to see what makes sense. And so that might change.
Thank you. As of, oh, hang on, one more just came in. With more electric cars being purchased, small driveways or only one driveway spot will make charging more than one car more challenging. Is this something builders and cities will look at addressing to ensure enough driveway space?
I think it's an excellent point. We definitely will consider that. I don't know whether Kate, that's something.
Yep. I can jump in on that, Ray.
Yep.
So it's a great question, and it is definitely something that we're looking to. As it was mentioned in the presentation, Council has endorsed and has a climate action plan to look at climate change opportunities. And part of that plan is to look at opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% to 2041 and up to 80%, I believe, beyond. So and part of that strategy is going to be looking at ways that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, that is to look away from relying on the internal combustion engine vehicles, and electric cars are obviously one of those opportunities in that space. Through development applications that we'll be considering through as North Oakville continues to grow and expand. It might be that part of the zoning regulations that we are considering would be to include facilities that would allow for builders to provide charging stations or opportunities for charging stations within the dwelling unit as part of the garage or external to the garage. So it is something that we are considering to align with Council's vision in that way, and also support the direction for the vision for North Oakville as well, which is to ultimately be more transit supportive and pedestrian oriented as well.
Thank you. We don't have another question. It's more just a comment around thanking you for your response and just noting that this person's neighbours has 5 vehicles registered to their household, which takes up most of the spots on their street. So these people are unable to park in front of their house.
Well, thank you for that comment. Definitely something we will look into.
And as of now, we have no other questions. I think we can leave it a couple of minutes, and then if no more come in, we can wrap up a little early and then post all anything that comes in afterwards online. Just while we're waiting, I'll reiterate that if anyone has any comments or questions that they want to submit after this, you can email parking@oakville.ca, and any of the questions, along with the answers and the presentation slides from tonight, will also be posted online on oakville.ca in the coming days. There's also the survey that's being put out. So if you haven't filled that in already, please go to oakville.ca and fill that out as well, so that we can gather your feedback to shape this even more. All right, I don't see any more questions coming in. So if everyone's okay, I think that we can give people about 20 minutes of their meeting time back. Thank you very much, Ray, for the presentation. Thank you, Kate and Hania, for answering the questions. That was fabulous. Have a good evening.
Thank you.